Good morning and welcome to my breakout session at the National Enterprise Network Conference. This year's conference is all about unleashing innovation, and this breakout is focusing on creating efficiencies and productivity within your business. And I believe that the two are directly linked, and I'd like to show you how. My name is Louise Lee, and I haven't always been founder at Saunders & Lee. I started my life in this incredibly unassuming 1960s tower block, and I was private secretary at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. And it was in that building that we stayed for a couple of years before we moved to our swanky headquarters on the banks of the Thames. And I'm guessing that this picture gives you a better idea about where it was that I worked. When I first started there, our systems and processes were still very manual, and in fact we did have a typewriter in every room. We did have a computer, nothing as swanky as this one, and occasionally the computer system would go down. And when that happened, our floor messenger, a real person who carried pieces of paper, would deliver a pink memo to us telling us to revert to fallback procedures. So we dragged our trusty typewriter out and we could still communicate with the rest of the world by telegram. And it wasn't just that type of system and procedure that was in place. Our own job, we had a Bible for it. And we were responsible for maintaining that Bible. And the Bible contained all of the information, all of the processes about how to do our job. And there were two reasons why this was really important. Firstly, when everyone went home at the end of the day, the duty officer would come on duty, and they would historically have been head of service, so they had a vast knowledge, but what they didn't necessarily know was how to do your job. And so if there was an emergency, they had access to your Bible and they could do your job, which meant you very rarely got called in. The second benefit to having a Bible was that we moved jobs every 2 to 3 years. And so with that level of turnover, you're losing a lot of information with every staff change. However, it was your responsibility as the current post holder to update your Bible, to update your processes. Your successor would come in, you'd have a week's handover with them, work through the processes, make sure that they were up to date, and then you would move on to your job. And so the process would keep going on and on and on, with the processes for your job always being updated. When I left the Foreign Office, I realised that a lot of no organisation I worked for subsequently did this. And yet the benefits are immense. And then I got to thinking that it's not just large government organisations that have that level of processes. The likes of McDonald's, they have processed the socks off everything to do with their business, and they sell them. They sell those processes to those folks who'd like to have a McDonald's franchise. And so what this means for the franchise holder is that they can open their business on day one. We'll forget about the supply chain side of things, but they can open their business on day one, and they've got a process manual that tells their new employees exactly how to do everything. And so when Bert is standing there waiting to receive the first customer order, and that first customer order is a Big Mac, he can tell Bill, who's building those Big Macs, to get on with that order. However, if Bill has never made a Big Mac and never seen a Big Mac, the order might go out looking like this now world-famous Big Mac fillet of fish nugget McFlurry burger. However, you don't need to worry about that. McDonald's has got it covered because they create make sheets. So you've got your burger buns all lined up in front of you, the burgers coming off the griddle on the left and all the ingredients stacked up. All you have to do is follow these make sheets so that every single burger you produce looks like the same burger whether you are buying it in Australia or the United Kingdom. These make sheets ensure that McDonald's burgers look the same throughout the world, and therefore they are maintaining brand uniformity because of this one process. And it's not just the make sheets that they create. They have a flow unit, or a customer as we might call them. The customer arrives at the drive-in or the walk-in, they place their order, and they've got a process chart to show exactly what needs to happen to get that order out the door looking like a McDonald's meal. So McDonald's have created a raft of teachable and repeatable processes which they sell. And if I take the humble cup of tea as an example, if I'd never seen a cup of tea, I didn't know what one looked like, I didn't know what the end product should be. And yet someone gave me these 5 ingredients and said to me, please go make me a cup of tea. I wouldn't know what to do with them until someone puts them into a clear process. So we know that in step 1 you boil the kettle, in step 2 you put the tea bag in and you pour hot water on it. Now for those of you who are thinking I've missed out a step and that milk should have gone in at step 1A, you're very wrong, because we can quite clearly see the milk goes in at step 4. So we've added the hot water, we've given it a stir at number 3, allowed it to steep. At number 4 we put the milk in, we give it a squish, we take the tea bag out and we have got a delicious cup of tea. And yet, if we hadn't had those 6 processes mapped out for us, we'd still be staring at 5 ingredients on the countertop and not having that delicious cup of tea. So this is the benefit of teachable and repeatable systems. They ensure your team know what to do at all times and they keep work flowing smoothly. Now, I think for small businesses, there are 2 choke points as they're growing. The first is this person here. They are the business owner. There's only one of them, and they are the finance director, the sales director, the operations director, marketing, everything to do with their business. This one person does. All of the information is in their head. So if they want to delegate or they want to outsource, one of the first things that they will often say is, I don't have time to explain. It's quicker for me to do it myself. And yes, they're right. And they're right on one occasion only. Because if they've written out what the process is, they can explain the process and it becomes a teachable, repeatable process. The second choke point is when boxhead number 1 goes out and finds other people to fulfill those functions. So we've now got 5 boxheads performing finance, operations, marketing, business development and sales. And unless these folk update their Bible or their processes in the same way that we used to at the Foreign Office, the processes become out of date and it makes it much more difficult to either hire or outsource someone to begin to assist these functions. I mentioned earlier about brand uniformity, that the make sheets at McDonald's allow every single burger to go out of the door, whether in Australia or the UK, and they go out looking identical. Within your business you can create the same. You can create a consistent tone of voice, and you can do that with document templates and email templates. And so processes don't just keep work flowing, but they keep your brand and they maintain that consistency and that uniformity. Now, coming back to today's subject for the conference, which is unleashing innovation. The prolific author Tom Kelly says, if you acknowledge that creative thoughts are the engine that drives innovation, suddenly creativity becomes really important. However, the not so prolific or famous Louise Lee says, but to be creative, you must give your mind freedom and space to breathe. And that's what processes give an organisation or an individual. They allow you to be creative. They allow you to give your mind freedom and space to breathe. And in my experience, I've discovered that there are 5 steps that really set small businesses up to do this. So I'm going to go through those steps now. At the end, I'll give you a link so that you can access a program online, which is free, but it digs deeper into each of these 5 steps. I don't have the time to do that today, unfortunately. So step number 1, what do you do? On a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly and annual basis, as a business owner, what tasks do you have to do to keep your business running? As you make a note of those tasks, think about whether only you can do it or whether you could outsource it, whether you could get somebody else to do it. You don't have to do anything else other than that at the moment. You're simply creating a list of tasks that you perform, that you can do or that someone else can do. Step 2 is about using folders as signposts. As organisations grow, filing structures tend to become more and more chaotic. Small businesses, on the whole, can do with probably 5 or 6 top-tier folders. So, for example, company admin, clients, projects, finances, marketing, sales. And if you have as few top-tier folders as possible, and when someone clicks on that folder, it reveals another set of subfolders. What you're doing is you're creating signposts from those folders. You are directing somebody to either find or file the document that they need. So for example, if you imagine getting to a road junction and there are 27 options that you can take, 27 roads. Whereas if you only had 5 options, that would make your choice far easier and you'd know exactly where to go to find or file those documents. So step number 3 is about manipulating the software. All document storage like OneDrive or Dropbox will order your folders in alphabetical order, and your email clients will do the same. So Google Mail or Outlook, they will all file in alphabetical order. However, I don't want to see those folders like that. I want to see them in this order because this is what makes logical sense for my brain and my workflow. So simply by prefacing each folder name with a number, the folders are suddenly shown in exactly the way that I want to see them. And what this does is it means my brain doesn't have to think about what it's doing. It knows where everything is, so there's no stopping or blocking. The workflow continues. Step 4, there's 5 step 4s I'm afraid, so hang on in there. Step 4 is all about time is money. So the first step is to record where you spend your time. As a business grows, it becomes more and more important to outsource as much of the non-revenue generating work as possible. So for example, let's say that I needed to create some social media graphics. I end up spending all day on them, and yet if I'd actually been working on client work, I could have perhaps earned the business several £1,000s. And I could have paid a graphic designer to create these social media graphics at maybe £400 or £500. They'd have taken half the time, a lot less money, and the graphics would have been far, far better. So begin to make a note of where you spend your time so that you can begin to see where you are actually losing your business money. The second step 4 is all about hard landscaping your diary. As an example, perhaps the breakout session today was meant to have been run by someone else and they couldn't make it, so I get a phone call first thing this morning asking whether I can step in. Because I've hard landscaped my diary, I can make better informed choices about whether I can or can't commit to this breakout session. So I can have a look and see that I can process my emails and check my social media on the train. The bank rec, well, that can wait until tomorrow. And likewise, in the afternoon, I can respond to emails and check social on the train. And that blog, well, that doesn't need to be posted for another week, so I can schedule that for Monday. Now, when it comes to the client work, I have project management software that supports everything in my business and my client's business. And that piece of software is called Asana. So I log into Asana, that tells me all of the tasks that I have got scheduled for me today. And I can look at those tasks and decide whether only I can do them or whether perhaps I can delegate them to someone else. And if I can, then I can go through each task, make a note of what I want that person to do and reallocate it to them with today's due date. If I can't defer it or delegate it, then I need to do it. And so once I've delegated and deferred everything, I've got a very clear list of what needs to happen today and I can allocate the appropriate amount of time. That turns out to be a couple of hours, which means I can come here relaxed, knowing that everything is under control in my business. But unless I'd hard landscape my diary and unless I knew everything that had to be done today, I wouldn't have been able to defer or delegate. And so hard landscaping your diary means that you can make much better business decisions when things perhaps take a tumble. The third step is about creating templates. Now, I create templates for absolutely everything that I'm going to do more than once. And earlier I mentioned that that maintains a consistent tone of voice, and that tone of voice could be yours as the business owner, or perhaps you've got a copywriter to help you. But what it means is that every email that leaves your organisation has the same tone of voice. And that's really important when it comes to brand uniformity and also saving time. I don't want to have to sit and draft a number of very similar emails. If I've got a template, I can use that as my skeleton, as the bones of the email, and then I can personalise it top and bottom. This isn't about automating so that people, your clients, feel as if they're perhaps just part of an email automation system. It's about saving you time so that you're not constantly redrafting the same email over and over again. And another benefit is that, let's say you hire in a temp and you want them to send out 60 welcome guides or a variety of other emails. You can direct them to the email templates, give them the details of who you want them to send the email to, and that's it. The process is as simple as that. Because you've created your templates, you've got teachable, repeatable systems. The last step in step 4 is about keeping a list of FAQs. Now, if I'm constantly being asked questions, then it means that either my processes are not clear or I'm not communicating clearly with my clients. And so both of those things need to be addressed. And the only way I can do that is by keeping a note of the questions that I'm asked. I don't mind being asked questions, but if I want to be head down working on something, I don't want to be frequently interrupted with how do I, how long does it, where is it? And so keeping a list of FAQs means that you can stop having frequently asked questions of you. Now, step 5 is about bringing this all together. I told you it was a whistle-stop tour. So in step 1, we looked at what to delegate, whether only you could do it or could someone else do it. We looked at writing the processes for those tasks. And once you've got those processes, it will give you an idea about what can and can't be automated. Now, you might not know what can be automated, but an expert will. I spoke about Asana, the project management system that allows for clear communication between me and my team. And all of that information means I can hire the correct folk to do the tasks, because I know what the tasks are, I know how to do them, and I know what skills are required. And when you have all of this information, you can create your outsourcing plan or your hiring plan. To support all of that, I use a lot of software, and these are the 9, what I call my starter pack, because I think these give you a really good introduction to begin your automation. And it's your automation that ultimately is going to save you time and create that freedom and space to breathe. So again, there are some QR codes in here which will give you links to some free trials. All of these except Xero have free versions available. So let me start with Asana. Asana is my project management software. I really could not run my business without it. It keeps track of everything in my business and everything to do with my clients. And because everything is in there, it means I know what's going on. I have a bird's eye view. And as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to hard landscaping my diary, I can then look to see what client work is taking place and delegate it or defer it if necessary. So that's Asana, and I heartily recommend that you have a look at it. The next 2 are screen recording software. I do a lot of videos, so I do actually use one with a reasonably high price tag called Camtasia. But to start with, these will work really well. So what are you going to use a screen recorder for? I mentioned earlier about recording your processes, and I literally did mean record them. If you are doing that task and your task is at your computer, then take a screen recording and do a voiceover or talk to the screen recording as you're doing it. Because if you're doing the task already, you might as well record it, and then you've got the beginnings of your process manual or your Bible. And using a screen recorder means you don't have to make detailed written instructions, so it doesn't actually take you any longer to delegate this task. You've done it once, you've recorded it, it becomes a teachable, repeatable process. Now onto the sexy stuff, the automation. Zapier is the piece of software that holds all of these or links all of these software together. So I use HubSpot as my CRM, and if I click that I have successfully won a new deal in HubSpot, clicking that button tells Zapier that it needs to do something. Zapier knows, because I've told it, that it needs to tell Xero to create a new contact record and a new deposit invoice. Both of those things would take maybe 15 minutes. All I've had to do is click a button in HubSpot and Zapier has taken care of the rest. Because I've just won a new project or a new deal, Zapier knows that I will need to have a new project in Asana. And so the moment I click that button in HubSpot, Zapier instructs Asana to create a new project. And Asana, because a new project has been created, automatically creates a new task, assigns it to me with today's due date, telling me that I need to go and populate that project. HubSpot also has the ability to track email opens. So if you send an email to someone, Asana can send you an alert to tell you that they're looking at it. Now, I know this is a little bit contentious and a little bit big brothery, so you can use it or not. It's entirely up to you. The benefit is that perhaps you want to know that someone is reading your email, they're thinking about you, and so now might be a good idea to phone them because they are focusing on you. The flip side of that is you could phone them and they say, well, I'm busy reading your email, I haven't got time to talk. But at least you know they have got it and they've read it and they're focusing on you. So what you do with that little bit of tech is entirely up to you. So the next 3 zaps that I have set up are, the first 2 are to do with calendar and booking consultations, because I've spent much of my life arranging appointments and frankly it's tedious playing diary ping pong. So from my website you can book a consultation and that button takes you through to Calendly, which is a piece of software that's linked to my diary. When you book that consultation, Zapier knows to then go to HubSpot and tell HubSpot to create a new contact record and a new deal. Calendly is also linked to Zoom, and I host my consultations on Zoom, which is a video conferencing software. So when you book a consultation with me, Calendly and Zoom will automatically send you an invite with a one-time URL to our web conference. And it will also send you automated reminders at predetermined times. In this process, I haven't done anything. My prospect has clicked the button, booked a consultation, and the software has done everything else behind the scenes. And lastly, this is my favourite. It's creating project folders from project numbers. The reason I like project numbers is that they provide you with a consistent naming convention for project documents. They provide a consistent folder structure. So you'd have your project number dash project name. And even more beneficial is that that project number can be referenced in Xero, which means you can run P&L per project rather than just across the business as a whole. So my project numbers are generated in Trello. Zapier recognises that a new project number has been created, and then it goes and tells Google Mail to create a project folder in everybody's email account in the organisation. So whether or not that person's working on that project, they've got a folder created, which means if they do become involved at a later date, they don't need to create a folder. And it also means if I need to dig into their emails for any reason, I know exactly where anything to do with that project is. It's going to be in that project folder. And the other thing that Zapier does is creates a project folder in Google Drive to maintain that folder structure of using your folders as signposts. These 6 pieces of automation save on average 30 to 60 minutes. And I haven't done anything at all. I've just set them up. And as you can see with the Calendly, the first zap on the left, because you've booked a consultation, it's created a new contact and created a new deal. You'll remember in the previous slide that with HubSpot you can create a new contact and create a new invoice. So you're starting to create automation that keeps everything flowing from the time you get a new deal to being successful with that deal. And so today's subject of the conference is about unleashing innovation. You'll remember I said earlier that if you acknowledge that creative thoughts are the engine that drives innovation, suddenly creativity becomes really important. And that the world famous Louise Lee says, but to be creative you must give your mind freedom and space to breathe. And that's what those automations do. They give your mind the freedom and space to breathe so that you can be creative and you can unleash your innovation. Because without those automations, you are constantly bogged down in the detail of running your business. I mentioned earlier that I would give you a QR code that will take you through to this program. So the 5-step program, where I dig down into more detail about each of the steps, and there are worksheets and videos to support that. And you are very, very welcome to share this with anybody that you know. Thank you very, very much for joining me today. I hope the rest of the conference goes really well. My name's Louise Lee, and if you have any questions, please do ask.